We have already talked about present verbs, present AR verbs, and now we're going to discuss the other two types of verbs, ER and IR verbs in the present tense. Obviously the reason why is so now that we can correctly conjugate all three types of verbs. Okay, I've got a lot of terms. Some of these you will already know, and some you recently learned, and some are possibly new to us today. Subject pronoun is the subject, but the subject pronoun is what word has specifically replaced the actual noun. So instead of me and Kim, it would be we or nosotros. Instead of the boys, it would be they or ellos. A verb is the action word in the sentence. It is what the person or thing is doing. Infinitive means the verb is in its original, unchanged form. So in English, that would be anything with to in front of it. To ski, to swim. In Spanish, it has to end AR, ER, or IR. And we've already discussed AR verbs, so just ER and IR today. Conjugated means it has been changed. The end has changed to agree with the subject, fits in the sentence now. The stem, so for example in the verb hablar, the stem is everything but the last two letters. The last two letters are the end. An ER verb, this is pretty simple. In Spanish, an ER verb is any verb that ends in ER, the letters ER, in infinitive. So for example, comer, beber, leer, comprender, any of the Spanish verbs that end ER. IR verb is then any verb that ends in the last two letters IR in the infinitive form. Escribir, compartir, vivir. Please note, however, that the verb ir does not follow these rules. Just because it says ir does not mean it's an IR verb itself. It's an irregular verb. It has its own rules. This is review. We had 3 steps to conjugating a verb, and one was to cut off the end. So for an AR verb, we would just chop off the last two letters AR. So now for ER and IR, we're going to take off the ER or take off the IR first. Second thing we need to do is find the new subject. So who is doing the action in the sentence? Am I doing something? Are we doing something? Is it about a dog? Is it about the state? Is it about the president? And after we have our new subject, we add our new end. So I speak, hablo, nosotros, we speak, hablamos. So AR verbs, those endings went o, as, a, amos, ais, on. So we added those endings to the stem to conjugate them. Ver, just so you're aware, it's an irregular ER verb. And it's irregular because in the yo form, normally we'd take off the last two letters, but in the yo form it keeps the E. And in the vosotros form, where the vowel usually has an accent, this one does not. Okay, so we've got 2 types of verbs that we're discussing today. Verbs that end in ER and verbs that end in IR. So here are the endings for ER verbs. They're a lot like the AR verb endings, except instead of A's, they have E's instead, because it's an ER verb. So instead of o, as, a, amos, ais, an, we have o, es, e, amos, eis, in. We're going to conjugate that right now. So correr, when you're doing a verb chart, always put the verb in infinitive in Spanish and then in English. Correr means to run. So right now, the very first thing, my first step is what? Cut off the end. So these last 2 letters, I'm going to cut them off and I'm going to rewrite just the stem part. And now that I have my stem, I find my subject. In this case, I should have them written in here. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes. Anyway, so now that we have the new subject, The last thing we do is add our ends in. So yo corro, tú corres, él, ella, usted, he, she, or you formal run, corre. We run, nosotros corremos. Y'all run, corréis, vosotros corréis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes, they or you all formal run, corren. Over here we have an IR verb. The endings ER to IR are very similar, except for in nosotros, instead of an hemos, it's imos, and in vosotros it goes from es to is. You should be able to completely memorize these endings. You have to know them. So AR, o, as, a, amos, ais, an. ER, o, es, e, hemos, eis, en. IR, o, es, e, imos, is, en. If you don't have those memorized, you are really going to struggle in Spanish 1. Or any Spanish level, really. Alright, so vivir is to live. And the first thing I need to do is cut off the end. So I'm going to take my stem and write that out. And now that I have my stem, I'm going to add my new endings. So I live is yo vivo, you live, tú vives, él, ella, usted vive, nosotros not vivemos, vivimos. Y'all live, vivís, accent, and they live, ellos viven. Note that IR verbs are not the verb ir. Ir is a separate verb unto itself. Okay, got a couple examples over here that we're going to work through, starting in Spanish. Escribes. So this is the verb escribir. This is an IR verb. And escribir means to write. So someone writes. And if you know your endings, o, es matches to, or you. So the person who writes is you. Right. Comprenden. That's from the verb comprender. That is an ER verb. And comprender is to comprehend or to understand. So going through the endings, o, es, e, hemos, eis, en. It's the last one. That one matches up with they, or you all formal. So in this case, they understand. Please note that since these are conjugated, there is no to anymore. That's the infinitive. When we conjugate, we have the subject provided in the sentence. Vivís. That comes from the verb vivir. That's an IR verb, and you can tell by the ending is with an accent. And so vivir means to live. And the is ending is for you all, or I'm just going to write y'all. Now we are in English going to Spanish, and I've given you the subjects right here, so this should be a little easier. I drink. Yo. To drink is beber. The first thing we do when we conjugate a verb is cut off those last two letters. So beber goes away, and I drink, yo bebo, and then Pepsi. Name brands, person's names, things like that don't change, company names. So yo bebo Pepsi. We share. We is nosotros, unless you are absolutely sure that every single person in that group is a girl. Remember, you always use the masculine subject pronoun. We share. Share is compartir. And the first thing I do is I need to cut off those last two letters. So it's an IR verb for we, compartimos. We share. And the girls eat. Now you technically can write las chicas, but I always prefer that you write a subject pronoun whenever possible. So the girls, instead of saying las chicas, I want you to write they, ellas, and to eat is comer. So the first thing we want to do is take off those last two letters. And what matches with they, ER verb, comen. They, or the girls, eat, comen. Please pause to copy down. Pretty simple practice today. You have two verbs starting in Spanish. You must write in English both the subject or subject pronoun, so who it is, along with the verb itself. So for example, hablo would be I talk, not just talk. If you don't give me the subject, you don't get all the points. Last two right here, same thing. Now in English you write in Spanish. You must provide the subject pronoun as well as the corrected verb form. You can't give me the verb in infinitive. So if this was she talks, I don't want, or I talk, I don't want it to be yo hablar. I want it to be yo hablo, conjugate it.